Okay, and here we are. Um, welcome everyone. Um, it's a small group here in the Zoom call, but also hello to everyone watching this on the recording. I am very excited to be here um, and have this very long overdue conversation with Khadija. The way this is going to work is I'm going to give a land acknowledgement. Then we are going to get into some intros and then we're going to start this discussion. Without any further ado, um, let's talk land acknowledgement. I am currently in and from Jikarundo, sometimes referred to as Arirundo. Many land acknowledgements refer to it as Garundo, or more often the anglicized Takranto solely, but this isn't grammatically correct. On its own, Garundo doesn't mean anything other than a tree standing up in the water. So the G gives you the locative tying this concept to a specific place. So the history and meaning behind this name is disputed, but the majority of Haudenosaunee speakers and scholars agree that it means more or less where the trees stand up in the water. This is referring to the fishing weirs that one would commonly see set up in the waterways on the paddle into Jitgarundo, once a place of abundant fish. As a result, this place has long been a meeting hub for various indigenous peoples and nations to eat, have ceremony, build community, make treaties together, a tradition that, although interrupted, continues to this day. So first, a note on the term indigenous. It's not widely accepted or liked by many people. An Anishinaabeg elder and friend told me the other day that he hates the term. He sees it as a downgrade from First Nations and wouldn't identify as anything other than Anishinaabeg anyways. That being said, many Indigenous scholars and activists use this term to talk about similar experiences that Indigenous peoples go through. So when I generalize or refer to Indigenous peoples, I'll be referring either to the peoples with this lens of how they've gone through similar experiences of colonialism, or referring to pan-indigeneity, a recent urban phenomenon. So, Jikarundo is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit Nations. It falls under the jurisdiction and territory of the Two-Row Treaty and the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. I'll go through the history of each of the nations in this area as well as the meaning of the treaties that I've mentioned. So first of all, the Huron-Wendat peoples, previously united by the now broken Wendat Confederacy, have been living in this region since time immemorial. The Huron-Wendat nation, specifically the Huron peoples, are the home of the Peacemaker, the great uniter of the Haudenosaunee peoples and Confederacy. During the mid-1700s wars between the French and the English in this region, the Huron-Wendat peoples were allied with the French. As a result, they were subjected to one of the most brutal genocides in North American history. This was one of the first uses of smallpox blankets by the British, a tactic that became notorious in Western Canada nearly 100 years later. Many Huron-Wendat people fled and became integrated in Haudenosaunee and Mississauga communities and were assimilated into their cultures. However, Huron-Wendat cultural and language reclamation has been ongoing for the last 15 or so years, as some community members seek to revive a language that has not been spoken in over 150 years, reviewing Jesuit documents and consulting elders and knowledge keepers in their communities. Secondly, the Seneca Nation has been present along the Humber River and the surrounding area since time immemorial, extending from Lake Ontario all the way to Lake Simcoe. The Seneca Nation are the westernmost member nation in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but are mentioned independently in the UofT and other land acknowledgements because they had roots in the area since long before the creation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The Haudenosaunee are included now in the UofT land acknowledgement as well, since the unification under the Great Law of Peace includes the Seneca under its broader mantle. The Seneca Nation now has members that reside in 6 nations, as well as what is known as upstate Michigan and New York. Thirdly, the Mississaugas of the Credit River are and historically have been a predominant nation in this territory. The Treaties 13, also known as the Toronto Purchase, 14 and 18, as well as the Williams Treaty, which govern most of the GTA, are all made with them. These treaties were initially unjust. For example, the Toronto Purchase was made for 10 shillings, and the Mississaugas of the Credit Nation did not agree to surrender their land. The Williams Treaty was not even made with a Mississauga of the Credit at the seat of the table. It was signed by individual members of other nations, many of whom were coerced into signing. Even though the initial terms of the treaties were unjust, they were still broken on terms such as land allotments, fishing rights, and waterway access. The Dish with One Spoon Treaty is the treaty that governs relationships between all nations in the large territories that include the GTA. After a time of conflict and war between various nations, notably the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, these nations came to agreement that the land and water and all the resources within it would be shared by all nations under some common principles. Simplified, that one would take no more than they needed, that one would leave cleaner than they found the area, and that the reciprocal relationship between the people and the land would be respected. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about ongoing claims and conflicts. First of all, in Six Nations, at 1492 Landback Lane, there has been an ongoing land dispute between Foxgate developers and Haudenosaunee land defenders. Recently, Foxgate Development has retreated, even though the injunction is still in place, but officially now the land is in control of Haudenosaunee land defenders. The Mississaugas of the Credit have won a historic land claim in Toronto, but have an ongoing water claim to all of the waterways from Lake Ontario to Lake Huron. I think they were filed in 2001 or 2002, and they still have not reached a court. And then lastly, I'd like to talk about the homeless evictions that are ongoing in Toronto, but from a perspective of treaty obligations and treaty rights, in that a lot of the people that are being evicted from encampments are Indigenous. And given that we are the squatters much more than they are, this can also be viewed as a break in treaty obligations. So, what are our roles as settlers? Whether we see ourselves as immigrants, newcomers, or whether we have a long lineage from the land, we benefit from the historical and ongoing extractivism, colonialism, displacement, and genocide that Indigenous peoples have gone through at the hands of our governments. The notable exception, of course, being people who are descendants of enslaved Africans. They should never be called settlers, and each have a different individual relationship to the land and people that isn't my place to say. But perhaps in our countries of origin, similar situations are happening. As settlers, we then contribute to displacement and extractivism merely by existing in the place that we do. Thus, we need to struggle with the fact that the small part that we play in land expansion for the colonial governments is in fact part of the ongoing dispossession or contamination of various lands. So as Thomas King says, it's all about the land. Settlement is about displacement, and so all forms of settler colonialism are either directly or indirectly connected to the theft and dispossession of land, including residential schools, the foster care system, etc. It is for the purpose of weakening culture so that forced assimilation can happen, so that the connection to the land is severed, so that it can be exploited for resources. So if these are our roles as settlers, what are our responsibilities and obligations? I want to now talk about the Two-Row Treaty. The Two-Row Treaty is a treaty originally made between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, but has since extended to obligations of governments and peoples, in that the basic premise of it is that settlers and Haudenosaunee folks will go on their two separate rivers in their two separate boats, the ferry boat and the canoe. And they will not interfere with each other's lifestyles. Well, obviously that treaty has been broken, so now as treaty people, we have an obligation to fulfill our two-row treaty obligations. So how do settlers help contribute towards this? Through voting and education, obviously, but this is less than the bare minimum, right? So money, physical presence, and or time spent organizing, these are tangible things that can lead towards fulfilling treaty obligations. Treaties like the Two-Row Treaty that may have been interpreted from a Western perspective between two governments are actually treaties between people. So we have an obligation individually to uphold these treaties, especially since the government has shown time and time again that it won't uphold treaty rights nor follow its treaty obligations. It is up to individual settlers to step up to the plate. Thus, land acknowledgements mean very little if they are not followed up with action. What purpose does acknowledging that this land is not ours have if we do not take steps to return it to those that do have that relationship? So it seems to add salt on the wound rather than soothe it. So because of this, I urge you all to reflect on these words and consider the action that you might take to fulfill your treaty obligations in a meaningful way. Okay. now that the land and the peoples have been acknowledged, I'm going to introduce myself quickly. I'm going to introduce Khadija, and then we're going to get started on this talk. So, hey everyone, I'm Nikitha. I'm in my third year of undergrad, majoring in classical piano and Indigenous Studies, the VP External of FoMARA, and I'm really thrilled to be here with all of you. And I'm absolutely so excited to have Khadija Mbowe here. They're a Gambian Canadian American singer, entertainer, actor, voiceover artist, and all-around creative. They're an alumnus of the University of Toronto and the co-founder of the Marigold Music Program, aimed at changing the visual landscape of music by empowering marginalized youth. Khadijah's video from June 2020 talking about their experience at UofT was one of, if not the major inspiration for starting the Faculty of Music Anti-Racism Alliance. So it's an honor to have you here at long last. This interview is overdue. Welcome, Khadija. How are you doing today?
I was muted. I didn't know that. Oh, wow. Geez. Wow. That was me bowing. After such a beautiful land acknowledgement, I was like, oh no, I'm going to be awkward. But hi.
Hi. So basically what's going to happen this interview, we're going to center stories, namely yours, and how we discuss all the topics we want to get to. You can always move on or skip a question. Let me know if you want to. We're going to start off with some tough stuff, and then we're going to head into fun, beautiful stuff for the second part of the interview. If you have time at the end, we might do an audience Q&A period. See? So if it's all right with you, I'd like to start off with the first question.
Cool.
So that video, the inspiration for FoMARA, you reflect on experiences of being othered. There were micro and macro aggressions you faced here at UofT. Other students are going through the same thing right now and for a long time. So while you were at the school as an undergrad, how did you feel on a daily basis? Like, what were your primary emotions?
You know, the Faculty of Music is not a new setting for me to feel the way that I did. So I want to get that out of the way first, because I think people might have thought or been confused by the fact that I was like complaining about my school and blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of was like, you know, when everything's going wrong and then the wind blows the wrong way and you just start weeping. Just me? I'm kidding. No, but like, it just was like a thing where I just was like, it was the final, like, I don't know how to explain it. It was a final straw, basically, because I think I had just been so frustrated for all the time. I started Faculty of Music in 2016 and finished in 2020. And just seeing everybody all of a sudden have this racial awakening, I just was so annoyed, because I was like, must be nice to just now discover you're white. Like, you know, like I was like, must be nice to just now discover that racism is a thing that happens, or colorism is a thing. It's all racism, but either way. So for me, going to school every day, it wasn't necessarily anything new, but I think the thing that I complained a lot to friends about was that I moved to Toronto from Calgary. And I thought that I was going to be in like it's the most diverse city in Canada. Blah. I thought I was going to be like with the people, you know, I was like, this is going to be fantastic. And then my dumb ass went into classical music, and that is not where you find the people. Well, that is, but you know what I mean? Like, so in Calgary, actually, I was involved in the music scene there, and I knew way more racialized people of color in Calgary than I did in Toronto. So it was actually really hard, because it was the first time in my life. Okay, not the first time, but like one of the like first times in a while that I was in predominantly, like I was just a visible minority, basically. So that was a bit disheartening. In second year is when it really got bad, because first year I wasn't really thinking too much about that. I just was kind of like, oh, I'm just feeling this classical music stuff out. Let's see what happens. But second year was when it got bad for me, because I just like Charlotte, who was also part of Marigold Music Program, she was in fourth year when I was in first, and she was so great to me, but she graduated. And I think Corin was one of the only other Black students. Tristan was leaving. See, I'm naming everyone because I could literally name them all. Like I think Andrew had graduated or was in opera school, and Corin was. So I just felt very alone. I felt very isolated, and I just was like, I know that I am not different from everybody because I'm still a human, but I've spent my whole life being told that I was different because of the way that I look. So for me to then turn around and internalize that, and then for other people to call me like nuts or dramatic or sensitive for it, it's like, well, y'all did it. Like, you know, so it's very, I don't know, it's very, it was, I will say it was just kind of tiring. And I think the only time I ever found like a bit of like, because art school in general is tiring, like, and I was a performance major in singing. That in itself is tiring. All of it is having people constantly tell you about your voice, feeling like the standard for me was singers like a Jesse Norman or a Leotin Price or something like that, singers that were like voices of a generation. There aren't that many mediocre Black singers out there. So I always worried that that was a comparison that I was going to get. And as a result, I had to live up to that expectation, even though I was like, I just started singing classical music. Like, I don't understand what this is. I felt like a lot of times, even if it had nothing to do with how I looked, the fact that I even have to question it is something that should be addressed. Do you know what I mean? And I think people don't always get that. They just think, well, you're assuming that, and that's your own bias spilling out onto me. And it's like, no, I have lived experience about this. Times where I have not assumed it's about race, times where I have really gone out of my way to make excuses, and it's been told to me that it is, you know, it's just very, after a while, you can only take so much. So yeah, I just, every day I just was kind of like, you know, just that meme of the dude with the cigarette hand on the forehead, like, here we go. Like, and I wasn't really smoking weed then. God, I think if I did, it would have helped. Wow. Am I allowed to say any of this?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, dude, drugs. Ah! It was exhausting. Long story short. Oh, the sweating in my
so then this like horrible kind of exhausting exclusionary feeling, how is this, the manifestation of this, changed as you become more well-known and established? Do you still feel exceptionalized? And what ways has that changed? What ways
yeah
has it
I feel like that's always going to be the case, because in general, I feel like people like to put public figures on a pedestal and then push them off of it and laugh and enjoy it. You know, they build the pedestal, even if I don't want to be on it or somebody else doesn't, they'll push them onto it and then push them off. So I try to be very mindful of that, because I am, you know, I'm a dark-skinned, racialized Black creator, you know, and a lot of people, I don't think that I'm doing something so unique by sharing my thoughts on the internet. I don't think that my thoughts are so unique and so out there that no one has ever thought them before, no one's ever said them. It might be my delivery, it might be the way I organize my thoughts, I don't know, whatever it is. People seem to resonate. You see, I don't know words. Resonate. People seem to resonate with it. Might be a case for not smoking weed. But it's okay. People seem to resonate with it. And I know that there's a part of it of me being dark-skinned and being Black, and people are like, oh, I just don't get to see creators like you. And it's always interesting to me when people say that, just in studying theory of racelessness, because it's like me as in my complexion, my race, because I am still a human. So like, you're still looking at a human being. I just really want people to understand how much they reify racism by acting like someone like me is so different from them because I'm a different race, because that's not the case. Culturally, yes, there are going to be some different things because I grew up in Black American spaces, but also am West African. So like culturally, yeah, there's going to be some differences. You and I are going to have differences because of that. That's fine. But at the end of the day, there's not so much difference between us just because we're different complexions and ethnicities that we cannot see each other as actual human beings. And I think that that's the, I don't know, I think that that's part of it when it comes to people tokenizing or giving some great exceptionalism to me as a creator. It's like when people say, oh, they're so articulate. I'm like, y'all are so used to hearing or perceiving the stereotypical image that a lot of people don't realize they've had through media passed down of racialized Black people is one of entertainer and caricature and humor and all of this. So when and you see the history of comedy too, with even Black men that will dress up as Black women, and everyone's laughing at the expense, right? We were all there laughing with them. You see all of that. And so people don't stop and question for a second, wait, why is it so surprising to me that I see this person as articulate? Even if it's not about my race, but dare to ask yourself the question. People don't dare to ask themselves the bad guy question. Like, why is it that? Oh, maybe because people nowadays just don't study literature and they don't speak like this. Cool. If that's the conclusion you genuinely come to and feel comfortable at, cool. Maybe it's that they're dark-skinned, and I don't know that many dark-skinned racialized Black people. So I don't hear, the only interactions I have are through the media, and the media depictions are entertainment and stuff and very animated. So why do I think that this person is so articulate? Maybe I got to question that, like, I think it's all of that sort of stuff that plays a factor into that exceptionalism, plays a factor into how people can put certain people up on pedestals, especially when they are like, oh, you're different, you're a breath of fresh air, all this sort of stuff. And my biggest goal at the end of the day is for people to just really be critical of themselves above anything else, because that's one of the major ways to fix a lot of these issues. You can point the finger all day long, complain about things all day long, but if you're not turning that gaze inward, what are you really doing? I've had to turn that gaze inward for a lot of my life, for just because of the way my body is, but I've also been able to avert my gaze to a lot of other things, even if I'm marginalized. And that's something that I want a lot of us to recognize too, especially if you're dealing with work of anti-racism or racelessness or all the other things. No matter what it is, everybody has a capacity to do harm. And the more we embrace and accept that, the better and more streamlined these kind of conversations and then therefore actions are going to be. We get at a standstill with conversations so much. And it's so just like, oh my God, I'm tired of having conversations. Let's do shit. Sorry, this was a rant. I don't like to stay on topic, but I'm going to do my best.
No, it definitely hit the nail on the head there though. I think talking about just all of these conversations, us at the Faculty of Music Anti-Racism Alliances have had our share of useless conversations.
U of T loves to have a conversation.
Oh yeah.
I'm all right, girl.
Yeah. So then with doing all these things that may not be so effective or fostering or nurturing for the brain and spirit, burnout, what gets you down in your line of work? What really gets you burned out?
I always joke around about this, but I block a lot of stuff out because I'm like, my brain's protecting me. And I joke around about it because #trauma, but it's actually true. There's a lot of stuff that I try to treat like Teflon in a way, because if I let it get to me too much, I'm I won't do any of the things. I just won't do anything. And I've always been interested in sociology and English and media studies and stuff like that. That's just something I was naturally drawn to when I first started going to university before I went into music. That was my whole plan. I was like, I'm going to be a sociology professor. It's going to be lit. People are going to try to tell me that racism doesn't exist. And I'm going to pull out all these stats, some Durkheim, and be like, what's that? Well, Durkheim doesn't talk about racism. Anyway, but I was like, But I have mostly felt burnout, and maybe I haven't acknowledged it enough, about the process of making the stuff that I make and making sure that I put it out every week as opposed to the actual content, because I think sometimes in a sad way, it's so matter of fact to me about when I'm reading some of the information, I'm like, this does not surprise me. I have literally thought this. I have experienced this. I have felt this. I have had friends talk about, it's never something that shocks me. So when people are like, how do you do it? I'm like, girl, I am a racialized, bickety Black, dark-skinned person. Fam, I am used to, this is not, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. None of this stuff, there's very few things that people can say to me that will surprise me. I have been bullied about my race, my complexion from birth till, and people think that I'm being dramatic when I say that, but I'm the first earlier memory that my mom has told me about was her getting on a bus and a woman looking at me, a Black woman looking at me and going, damn, that baby's Black, you know, with this disgust. Me as a baby. So I'm not like, and that's stuff I grew up hearing. That's what people told me to my face, whatever. So to me, I don't get burnt out by the content necessarily as much because it doesn't surprise me. And that's sad to say out loud, but it's like, I've had to just have a tough skin. And there are times where I don't want to, because I'm not going to sit here and perpetuate the strong Black woman, whatever. I've talked about that. I'm a sensitive ass biznatch. I cry a lot and often. I'm tired a lot. So I don't want to say that, but I'm a very hardworking person and I really care about being in service of people more than anything. So to me, knowing that at the end of the day, whatever I make, whatever I produce or create, whatever, can help educate people. If, you know, I send people an organization that they should send money to and they can actually like put their dollars somewhere and stuff like that, brings me like joy. Like I actually feel happy thinking about it. And so that kind of counterbalances it, you know, like knowing I was doing these collection plates with my PayPal because people just send it to me now. And I'm like, okay, I don't use this anymore. I have Patreon, whatever. But it's just so nice that we like were able to come together. I stopped doing it because it looked a bit sketchy, you know, people sending money to my personal, it looks sketchy. I kept receipts, but you know, but like, it just felt so good thinking about it of like, oh, look, we raised for like No Name's Radical Hood Library or for like PMRS official, you know, like it just like, it felt so good to do that stuff and it still does. So that's what I'm passionate about is like, oh, my internet is unstable. Uh-oh. It's just helping people out. And yeah, the content, a bit much sometimes for sure, but that's also why I start doing more pop culture-y things to balance it out so that I can have doing it too. Because for me, analyzing the media, analyzing the sociological, sociocultural, internet aspects, all of that together is fun, actually. I'm a giant nerd. It's fun for me. The most recent video that I put out, though, is the first time, I think, in this whole year that I've been putting out videos where I actually stopped and was like I just like, I didn't even expect the response. It's about media and how they cover people's and missing white woman syndrome and all of that. And so I was rereading the script, or I was doing some editing, and there's a part in the video where I just start naming stats, and it's just, and I was sitting there, I think a few days ago, and I just started like crying. I was like, oh my God, what? I'm like, people really don't care about other people simply because of a cultural or physical difference. And that just boggles my mind. And I know I sound so like that mean girl's girl. She's like, I wish we could make cupcakes and all get along. But that's a belief that I genuinely have in a sort of cheesy way. Like it saddens me so much. I think how people just trying to exist in their bodies, like literally just existing, are told we're wrong. Not to. We're gonna not only you that you know that you're not allowed to. We're gonna put propaganda in the media so that other people start to believe in this thing. We're gonna strip you of land. We're gonna strip you of your right. Like that's when I start to think about the people that do that shit. That's when I start to get more like out, but like rageful. And I'm someone who really likes to understand my emotions because I think they're a tool. So I think rage is a tool. And I think anytime I start to feel that way or burnt out, thing like that, I back to the collection plate that rage and being like, let me just tell y'all a little something about some of y'all. And just, I don't know, that's the sometimes burns me out, but makes me feel hopeful in a way. That was such a long-winded answer. Oh my God.
No, no. Do not apologize. Your internet is starting to crack a little bit, though, I will say.
Okay, let's okay, hold on. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use my hotspot on my phone.
You don't
Phone
need to.
bills.
You're back now.
Listen,
You're back now.
The phone bill's already excessive. We might as well just, okay, let me just do that because I want to make sure that nothing dodgy happens. if it gets worse, then let me know and I'll switch back to Wi-Fi.
Okay, sounds good. While you are doing this, I will just say that like,
Did it freeze?
oh, just a little bit.
Is it back?
Yeah, you're back.
Perfect.
Okay. I think it's better.
I hope so.
I'll just say before I move on to the next question, oh no, it's way worse. It's so much worse.
Oh, okay. Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Okay. Before I move on to the next question, I'm just gonna say I recently watched your video on BBLs, and I know that it was like supposed to be a fun video, but that was one of the toughest videos you've done that I've had to watch. It was
really
tough. Yeah.
Why? If you don't mind, yeah.
Sure. It was just like you hit on like a lot of like bodily insecurities and stuff that like kind of like blindsided me a little bit. And it was just like coming out of I think it was also because it was coming out of a video that was like kind of like fun and like just like kind of like interesting and something like cool to talk about. And then I mean, you mentioned it too. Like, you also really felt it in the creation of the videos. So
I cried a few times.
Yeah, like I think that just like came through it. It was like really, really tough to watch. But
I thought it was fun because of how I was delivering it and because I'm smiling, but there's like a tear streaming down my face because I'm like, I'm not trying to promote diet culture, but I am because it's so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
I'm developing a much healthier relationship to my body these days. I'm not gonna lie. I'm definitely doesn't help that my partner is freaking ripped. She's like, damn it, got like a damn six-pack. I'm like, look at her like, what the fuck is this? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So in terms of like content that burns out and is annoying to deal with, something that FoMARA really wants to fight this year is Orientalism at the FAC, because we've just already seen it played out at the start of this year. So we really wanted to focus, like, if there's one thing we're going to fight people about this year, like, this is the thing we want to fight people about.
And people, can you just clarify to some people? Because I think even when I did this, people think that Orientalism is just about like East Asians. And it's like, that's not what Saeed said though.
No, it's not.
Hear his last name. He's an Arab man. Like that's anyway, sorry, continue.
Like would they prefer exoticism, maybe?
Anyway, sorry.
Anyways, like, you know, the non-white people. So true.
Someone zoom Saeed in.
Saeed.
No, Edward, you busy? I'm kidding. I'm sorry. Why am I like this? Okay.
Our brains. Okay, so lots of us, like, obviously you don't want to be trimmed to stereotypes, exoticized, but because of the programming that happens within the music that we're performing, we're forced to propagate this for the sake of marks or a degree, or our degree. Oh my goodness, degree.
It's fine.
So what do you say about like fighting this in classical music as a student organization?
Well, yeah, I think maybe just, well, you already know some of these steps, listening to people that actually have to deal with this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not East Asian, South Asian, I'm not Arab, so I don't know, like, I did make a video about East Asian stereotypes because at the time, I don't even think I had gone into learning about it, honestly. So I was like, you know, it was like, at first it was just like fun research for me to just go into. And then I was like, I should make a video about this because I think maybe other people are afraid to ask the questions or are afraid to say, especially racialized people of color that are automatically put in the ally category just because they're marginalized too, but like, doesn't mean that they are, you know, like that's not really, anyway. But I thought maybe other people are going to be confused too. So reading papers by East Asian writers, like research papers and stuff like that, for me was a thing. Like I wanted to make sure that like, okay, and I got to thank Priscilla for this because she's obviously the one that pulls my resources for me now. I think that's the first video her and I worked on together, actually. But obviously it's the listening first, because if you don't have the experience, you can relate again, because we are all people. So I think we've subscribed too much to this narrative that because somebody is, let's say, white, they will never understand what it feels like to be discriminated against or blah, blah, blah. And yes, to an extent, but I think they still understand the feeling of like somebody treating you like shit because of how you look. They might not understand to the degree, but doing that, I find, lets certain people wash their hands of having to really like confront the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like in the feeling place first and then in the action, because feelings cause action. If you just have pity for somebody, it's not really going to do much. So I think the listening, of course, first. And then I also just think like people don't understand why so many people are like, stop with all the Puccini. You know, like I don't think people get why, because they're just like, oh, it's opera. It was written in a certain time, blah, 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 blah. That is fair, fine. It was written in a certain time. People were openly racist. We can still ask and demand better of ourselves now. You know, like I'm like, we know better. So why aren't we going to do better? Like just because many people, and I'm using Puccini as an example because we know that he was king exoticism, king the East. Like he just was that guy. Many other composers were too. But yeah, I think there needs to be way more of a, I don't know how to explain it, like way more invested interest in like actually making this genre of music better. And the crappy part that I'm going to say to y'all is some people just aren't interested in that. Some people are very tied to their traditions. Some people are very tied to the way things are. And that's like, you just have to get in where you fit in is my thing. Like, I'm not going to keep pounding on the faculty of music door when I'm frustrated, because I've had conversations and I was running up against stuff too, and I was getting annoyed. So I was just like, let's make a music program. And Kevin and Charlie were like, yeah. And it wasn't that, I'm really simplifying that story. It wasn't that simple. And I didn't even, anyway, but we made our own thing, and we were literally just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what would stick. Like we had no idea what we were doing. None of us have ever made a music program. Kevin was the only one with even like, Kevin and Charlotte had like mentoring experience, and Kevin had worked in like a summer camp and stuff, but like I had no experience with this. So we were literally just doing it like y'all are and seeing what happens and making mistakes along the way, figuring it out, but really dedicated to the values of changing visual landscape of music. And so I think y'all just, for y'all, you already know what you stand for. Make sure your values are all flushed out, that everyone's on the same page. And you just find the people that are going to give you the opportunities, because there are going to be some faculty members that are going to keep trying to put you down, that are going to be try to be a deterrence to y'all, because people get threatened by change because they think, okay, if everything changes, where do I fit in this place? You know, I think that it's the actual, and that's people, like I said, people are led by emotion. Fear is a very strong emotion, and it can cause a lot of people to retaliate instead of actually stop for a second and go, these students are not my enemy. They are literally just trying to create more space for everyone. They're trying to call out the problems of this faculty. They're trying to let us know, hey, some of these composers, like this is a music school. Are y'all wanting robots, or are you actually wanting students that have a vast experience when it comes to musical education? You can't just throw a semester of I don't know, analyzing K-pop and certain I can't remember the like that class was good, but do you know what I mean? Like you can't like throw in a semester here, a semester of world music here, and then just be like, all right, sick. And then most of your faculty, if not all of it, for the majority is white, and they're teaching these things. U of T, I don't know, I think y'all are probably going to be good at this too, but you also just have to spot the bullshit. because there's going to be a lot of that, of people being like, we're dedicated to these, we're dedicated to change, we're dedicated. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about how dedicated you are. What are you doing? What are the actions? Like, I'm somebody that doesn't, even though I'm long-winded, I'm somebody that at the end of the day, when people are saying stuff after a while, I'm like, speaking in plain English, if I was 4 years old, how would you say it to me? What exactly have you done? And if you can't do it, then you haven't done enough, or you don't know what's going on. So I don't know. I think for y'all, it's going to be a matter of all of that. Just obviously listen, your mandate. You're like, we are not going to take any bullshit about this. Faculty music, y'all are up here with this Orientalism. Let's talk about it. There's that. There's the education portion of it too, because a lot of people genuinely just have probably never even heard that term outside of it being used. You know, there are a lot of people that, like we were talking about earlier, won't even understand that it's not just about East Asian people, you know? It's gonna be that, it's gonna be spotting the bullshit, and then it's gonna be finding people, which is tough, I know, but I think it's possible, finding certain teachers that you can actually like have as an ally, because that's the other part of it. Power dynamics are tricky. When y'all are all students, teachers are affecting your grades, are affecting all sorts of things. Like me, I was 24 when I started UofT, so I cared about my grades, but I was also like, this is all bullshit. Grades don't matter. Just say what the teachers want you to say so you can get a good mark. They don't care about what you actually have to say. And I know that seems very nihilistic, or not nihilistic, but you know what I mean. That seems very, but I don't know. I think trying to find a trusted teacher or some sort of person in some kind of higher position that can be an ally is very important. I think that's one of the biggest things, because y'all already know the work that you want to do. You already seem focused on what you want to do. It's just about, unfortunately, kind of like being strategic about it so that you have somebody in your corner to protect you, because you could have this mandate for the entire year, but if you don't have a safety net or somebody to like that really just doesn't give a fuck and is like, yeah, well, I'm about to be out of here, so, or let me help, or doesn't mind ruffling some feathers, it's going to be really hard. And maybe the dean is one of those people. I'm not sure. I haven't met her yet, but I hear good things, so I don't know.
Yeah, we're glad to have the dean, that's for sure. You should read some of her papers if you haven't yet already.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. Okay. Publish. Sorry. I'm surprised by that. That's not a surprise. That's not a surprise.
So yeah, I'll send them to you if you want.
Please.
Okay, last question for this kind of half of the interview. So some really nasty stuff in doing this line of work. Members of our club have received threats, intimidation, hate, contempt, systemic racism, bullying. I'm sure you've experienced your fair share doing equity work on the internet. So
people are such trolls.
How do you deal with feeling unsafe in like actively toxic spaces?
To be honest, I don't know how to explain. Like, I just am like, okay, for a while I was being really petty. It's Scorpio season, so I can say this. I was sending people links to BetterHelp when they were just not understanding the point of what I was saying, or just being completely rude. That's disrespectful, especially now that we know more about BetterHelp. That was a bit, I only did it a few times. Other times I would just send people an article from a Time article about 10 ways to listen better, because some people just really don't like to listen. They just, honestly, some people want to stay mad is what I'm going to tell y'all. People really want to stay mad. Like I said, fear is a very strong motivator. So for a lot of people, they are afraid and they don't want to admit it because people have egos. I'm a giant hippie, so I really believe in people really like need to have a reckoning with their egos before even trying to do this kind of work, or whilst they're doing this kind of work, and constantly checking that, because your ego will trick you into a lot of shit. It'll create that savior mentality, you know, that I've had to check in myself, because I'm like, girl, settle down, like, you know. So, you know, all of these sorts of things, I think you have to kind of have a self-awareness so that you can be self-aware for others, if that makes sense. And that seems very like, I don't want to, sorry, I try to be very careful with my words. I don't want to like make it seem like you have to like see what that person can't, but you kind of have to in a way, because so many people, it's much easier to just send someone a hate comment about how they look, their race, to send death threats. I don't know if I've even seen death threats. YouTube has this thing where they'll hold comments for review and I just don't open it. I also, on Sundays is when I release videos. I will interact with people on Sundays. After that, I won't. You will not find me arguing with somebody in the comment section about something, because a lot of times people just want the attention. Most times I will try to reach out in a place of like, kind of trying to pull love out of myself, even when it's hard, because it is hard. I'm sorry, it is. I don't expect this for everyone. Like, I do not expect everyone to reach within the deepest recesses of their soul and pull out love for people that are actively trying to repress and oppress them. I don't expect that. I do believe in that power, though, when not for the statistical majority, when people are really willing to listen and don't want to be assholes, you know, because there are some people that just want to be assholes, and I got nothing for you. Like, for me, one thing I won't do is fight with somebody. Like, we can debate, we can disagree on certain things, we can educate each other, and like, you can have a completely different political view than me, and we can duke it out and have fun like that, you know, and talk about these things and kind of meet each other a little bit closer to the middle and understanding. But I'm not going to fight with you if you genuinely just are like, Black people shouldn't do this or what. Like, I'm just not going to do that, because at that point you need somebody else to talk to you, and it's not going to be me. So I think one of the things that y'all, as hard as it is also think about protect, we say it's law, but protect your energy, like create those boundaries, because people are going to push you, especially when you're doing this work, because it's so easy for people to joke around and be like, oh, the social justice warriors are so sensitive, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I wear sensitivity as a badge of honor. Yeah, I'm fucking sensitive, because I know what it feels like to have people ridicule you and be straight up racist to you because of how you look. Yeah, so I'm gonna be a little sensitive about it. And I'm gonna do my damnedest. I'm not always gonna get it right. I'm gonna fuck up a lot, but wow, you said I could curse and I'm really going in. I'm gonna do my damnedest to like be a better person. And if you are on the internet trying to make me, and this sounds, I don't want to sound like this, but hippy dippy talk, trying to bring me down to your level, your lower vibration, the vibration of shame, guilt, anger, and fear, that is a lower vibration altogether. If you're trying to bring me down to that, I'm not going to meet you with that. And I have to actively tell myself that as well, because it's not so easy. I say it, but it is really hard. Like, a lot of people will watch my videos, they won't watch the entire thing, they won't listen, and they just want to be mad because they saw the title, and they'll immediately start commenting. Today, even in a video, I posted, hey, before you comment, I was like, please watch the entire video or get the summary from somebody else before you I didn't say that part, but watch the entire video before you comment based off your assumptions on what the title is. And I almost added, but I know most of y'all won't do that, so anyway. But I was like, Khadija, that's lower vibrational energy talk. You don't do that. So instead, I put a little heart beside it, and I was like, just let it be that. And like, even if you don't feel like coming from a place of love, sometimes you have to act like you are, because it is very tiring work. Like, some people, I just want to shake them and be like, no, the world is terrible and racist and we're trying to fix it. Don't you want to fix it? Bitch. But can't always do that, because some people really just don't want to listen. So it's finding those recesses to give to people, taking your breaks. For me, setting those boundaries, speaking to people that I feel comfortable with to talk about these things with, saying when I'm not going to talk about this stuff, when I don't feel like it, you know, like, and finding times to laugh, because I'm just like, this is all nonsense. Human beings are so absurd. I don't know if God exists, but if it does, probably looking down at us like, it's time to go to phase 2. This is a disaster. You know, like, I'm just like, I'm optimistic and also nihilistic, you know, a little bit of both. Healthy balance.
Healthy balance indeed. Very Alok of you.
Alok is very generous though. Like, I'm not as generous as Alok. I think Alok is a bit, I'm like, oh, I gotta be more like you. There are times where I'm like, so you want to fight today? And I just have to put my phone down and walk away. You just got to do it. Count to 10 before you respond, before you react. Count to 10 so that you can respond.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Choose whether or not to choose violence.
You know, and sometimes you have to choose violence because, and this is the part of me that's from Georgia, sometimes you need to tell people, I am not the one, because you think I am and you have been mistaken. Interesting. You must be confused because I don't know where you are, but let me point you in the right direction. Sometimes you got to have that attitude, you know, just to clear me. You got to,
Yeah.
So rude. You can tell that I've had to say that to someone before, be like, who are you talking to? That's interesting, because that's wild if you're talking to me. That's wild. Wow. Okay. Oh my gosh.
Oh my god. Okay. Let's call like maybe a 7-minute break. So I have my little ADHD brain like run around the house, and then we'll come back at 3:08 if that's cool with everybody.
Wonderful.
See you in a bit. Hey everyone, coming back. We are going to get started on the next part of our interview. Yeah. Hi Khadija, how was your break? Can you hear me all right, everybody? Yes? Ah, headphones. Khadija, can you hear me? You're muted.
I said nothing important.
All right. So yeah, welcome back everybody. We're going to get into the second part of this talk that I'm also very excited for. We've actually already covered like quite a bit of the questions that I had. I'm really glad that like the first part of this interview wasn't just like doom and gloom. It's very uplifting, made me feel good. Thank you. So I think I actually wanted to talk about something that you briefly mentioned in one of the first questions, which was bring personal experience into your videos. It's something you've talked about recently, how you're expected to have citations for everything, and you and your team are meticulous and wonderful, but you're shifting to talking more about your own personal experience. And that's very inspirational and near and dear to our hearts as we do this work and try to channel our stories and other people's stories. So can you talk about this change and how you felt as a result of making this change in your videos?
I think it was just a thing of like me feeling like I could trust my audience, to be honest, as one of the things, and then trust myself, because that's one of the factors. I just coming from like wanting to do sociology and stuff, and how everything had to be like backed up with stats, or like like there's I'm so glad I dropped out, because there was like 2 years of stats and I was like, I don't want to do that for 2 years. No, probably would have helped me, but here we are. But yeah, I just I didn't make like okay, I'm gonna start talking about my personal experience like that, a declaration to myself. I think it just kind of happened because I was feeling a bit burnt out because of how much I was doing, and having to do all the research and stuff, all this heavy lifting. It was just kind of exhausting, because I was like, I'm making sure that, everything that I'm presenting, for the most part, besides my tangents, are fact checked. So, because I love to look online and love YouTube as a tool to learn, and it's shitty because a lot of times I don't feel like I can trust the source, because there isn't as much information. People before weren't always sharing their works cited pages and stuff like that. But I come from that academia background where you're supposed to, like, if you put something in a paper, it's like, where did you get this from? If I say something in a video, it's like, where did you get this from? And have other people corroborated this? So I still believe in that 100%. But I think, yeah, after my skin tones and algorithm, all that sort of stuff, I just was like, I'm freaking tired of people trying to, like, I've made so many videos that have all of this information, this tangible, like, facts, truth with a capital T. And there will still be people that try to act like I am making shit up or pulling it out of thin air. And I was just kind of like, ugh, whatever. Like, can you just stop caring? It was like, okay, trusting the audience, and also stop caring about if people are gonna trust you or not. And for me, it was kind of tricky, because I'm like, okay, I don't see people that look like me in the academic-y, online, YouTube-y kind of spaces, specifically YouTube. I was like, I don't see as many people that are like very feminine and like, want to look cute and girly and blah, 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 but also are like, let's talk about some really depressing stats. Let me be your professor real quick. Like, I feel like there's so many different intersections of that, of like pretty privileged beauty, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, for me, I just was like, I am tired of worrying so much about what other people think, or thinking that I have to present all this info and the whole be the change you want to see in the world. Like, yes, I'm going to be a person that will present information as accurately as I can. But I'm also going to tell you about my lived experience, because I think so much of like Western education is based off of like, we'll prove it, or Pixar didn't happen, you know, basically that. And one factor of critical race theory and even activist tools are storytelling. That is something that you can use. And it is not so like, I don't know, it's not praised as much in academic spaces because there's a certain level of gatekeeping in academia that's somewhat necessary, but is some of y'all are doing too much. But it's also, there's like, I don't know, I feel like people really don't understand that the world is a lot bigger than Western influence, even though it is such a powerful influence. Like, I don't want to discount that at all. And it's an intentional, powerful influence. Like, this didn't happen on accident, you know, like if you study history at all, just think about World War II. If you want to understand how America's influence is just spread throughout everywhere, how much wealth that America had, you know, it's on purpose. So I kind of had to do my own decolonizing of my mind, you know, and just be like, hey, my stories are valuable. And if I'm going to tell people that telling stories is just as valuable as research, I have to walk the walk. So I have been more comfortable in videos if I have experience to the topic that I'm talking about, just talking about my own experience and making an entire section dedicated to it, because I'm just like, this is how I feel and think. I'm not just some person shelling out information to you without any sort of like emotional involvement to it or any sort of like connection. So yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a purposeful thing, but it was also intentional, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely.
It wasn't on purpose, but it was with intention.
Yes. I feel like a lot of the things we do end up that way.
You know, like, I'm like, I didn't intend to do YouTube like this. But I did have like, or I wasn't purposely like, I'm going to do YouTube and do sociology and media studies. But the intention, it always finds its way to the surface.
I had a question about healthy boundaries, but honestly, I think we've covered that.
Have many.
Yeah.
If you have a therapist, have many. Also, I don't know how many of you guys know this, but you guys, how many of y'all know this? See, correct yourself in real time. Make fun of yourself. It's fine. The student care. I feel like so many people don't know about student care, but you don't have to go through the therapy services that are through the U of T. Because I tried it and the woman was like, I got to refer you out because this file. So I just went on Psychology Today, got a therapist, and then it covered, I think, like $120 per session for up to 15 sessions or something like that, a semester or a year. And all you have to do is download this app, student care app, and you can upload the receipt or whatever, like the invoice that your therapist sends you, and they'll deposit the money back in your account.
Interesting.
You can do it for that, therapy, all of that. But yeah, my therapist was like $125 an hour, and I was like, ugh. But I only ended up paying $5 per session through that. So you don't have to go through U of T. For any of y'all that are wanting to go to therapy and want it to be cheaper or free, if you find someone that's even just $80 an hour, the University of Toronto, as far as I know, and this is for undergrad, it'll cover up to $120 or $125 for up to 15 or 20 sessions. So student care, do it. Sorry, that was just because I said therapy, but yes.
Yeah, no, thanks for the info. It's very useful.
People don't know about it. I'm like, dang.
Okay, let's talk about building community. So you have your nieces, nephews, and nibblings, aunties, uncles, and piblings.
It's the family.
It is. Do you have advice for FoMARA? We want to make community space, and through Marigold as well, right? Like, you've made all these beautiful spaces. Tell us about your experience.
I can't take full credit for that. I'm not even going. Like, Kevin and Charlotte were really like, Charlotte's spearheading the mentorship right now. And those are the same people that were in the summer music intensive. They're also in the mentorship now. So it's like building even more community with the people that they were, some of the same teachers that were in the SMI are mentors, not all of them though, but yeah. I don't know. I just really believe in collaboration and community. Like that's just something I believe in. I think individualism, like I think it's good to know how to be by yourself and know how to reckon with yourself. But I think individualism, like toxic individualism, people just looking out for number one and blah, blah. I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Everybody needs help to get somewhere. You don't get anywhere on your own. Anyone that says that is a liar, like, or really has to work some things out. But like, for me, I think building community is all of these things to me in my mind are so easy, but people like to make them harder than they actually are. Like if I was running a student thing and I wanted to build community, I just have game nights. You know, like where it's like-minded people with the same sort of values, same sort of convictions and wanting to make the world better. But we also like to have fun because it's exhausting. And you don't want every time you're meeting with your people to be, well, here's what they did today, you know, like that's really tiring. So like, that's just like a random example that I'm thinking of. And you can even end up getting into nice discussions about these sorts of things on a fun game night, like whatever. But like just finding little ways to like, I don't know, embrace those around you. Like for me, the nieces, nephews, nibblings, aunties, uncles, piblings, like Midori Marsh is the one who actually told me a gender neutral term for niece and nephew. Cause I was like, it was in an early video. Midori was like watching the earlier ones. And I was like, I don't know what a gender, she was like, oh, it's pibling. I was like, okay, cute. So that just kind of happened. But it was really fun to say that now in videos and to have people like feel like they're like, oh, I'm a nibbling or I'm a nephew. Cause it's just like, we're all like, I don't know. I really believe in that. Like, I really believe in that rainbow coalition idea that Fred Hampton always talked about, you know, where he was just like, I'm not focused on just being Black. That is a big part of it. And I'm going to deal with these issues 100%. But a lot of us are in this together. And we are going to build a rainbow coalition of brothers and sisters. The language is very binary, but you know, brothers and sisters that are just going to come together all the time. And like something Cornel West does, he's I don't know, I'm assuming a lot of y'all know who he is, but some of y'all might not. Very, very intelligent man, very like thought leader. He's just like so damn smart. You watch him talk and you're like, am I watching a preacher or a professor? I don't know, but it's incredible. Just watch him. I think he has a speech called Speaking Truth to Power. Definitely watch that. But yeah, he something that I noticed when I was watching some of his speeches or interviews is that he's always calling someone brother this or sister this. Like he just like, no matter who they are, if he's worked with them for a long time, he's like, thank you, brother, blah, blah, blah. You know, we work together. Like he's just, you can like sense that very communal sort of like him coming in like this with people, embracing them with, oh, that's the Wakanda thing. Uh-oh, did I just, anyway. But you know, embracing people. And so I just think that, I don't know, to me, community means a lot. Like I for someone that spends a lot of time by myself, just in a dark room on my laptop, like, like it actually does mean a lot to me. Like, and I think that, yeah, it's one of the most important things you can have, especially when you're building some sort of organization or something like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
Have a FoMARA game night. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
I don't know. Y'all don't have to do that. Like,
We as a club have been thinking a lot about beauty and joy and how like our joy is the strongest response to oppression that we have. And given that the Faculty of Music can be such a difficult place to just exist, and sometimes it's really hard to find that joy.
Like the building is just uninspiring in general.
It truly
like
is.
the actual like faculty, not the faculty itself is uninspiring. But anyway.
So like in the face of a lot of like hardship and really tough stuff every time you step into the building, how do you like what are your tips on reaching into the depths of your soul and finding love?
After I went on for so long being like, I don't got it like Alec does. Now you want to ask? This was a trap. I'm kidding. I do it like this, by joking around. I'm literally nothing if not committed to a joke. And on my Instagram, it always says this: I believe in learning, love, death, laughter, and collaboration, because those are all the things that I believe in. I believe in laughter. I really do, because I think humor is a way to cut tension. I think it's a great way to ease people into learning certain things that might be a little awkward or uncomfortable. I think it's a great way to relate to others, to call out weird things without it being so, because, not everyone can handle the fire. Some people are like, some people clam up, So, and for me, it's not about if I get to be the one to share a message, or if I get to be the one to change someone's mind. It's just about if their mind has changed. Like, that's the investment. It's about actually like the goal, not the person behind it, Yeah. So I think one way of doing that, which might seem kind of weird actually, but this just like is the vibe that I'm getting, is to kind of remove some of the responsibility on yourself. And I don't know how to explain that without it sounding like, I don't mean for you to absolve any of yourselves of dealing with these things, but I think older generations are on their way out. And by on their way out, I mean closer to death in the likelihood, right? So younger folks are having to kind of reckon with this and deal with the mess being left behind. And I think it's fantastic, because the way that I see younger people organizing, getting together, like just educating people in online spaces and off, I think it's so incredible. I just want y'all to know that you are not responsible for all of this. And it can be hard to find joy when you feel like it's your responsibility to fix a problem you never made. So I would very much just really want y'all to know it is okay to take a few percentages of that responsibility off yourself, just even if it's for a few moments at a time, like if feeling that responsibility helps you stay motivated, then great. But if it's dampening you, if it's doing this to you, I would recommend kind of trying to remove some of that responsibility on you. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, and this is kind of sad but true, for a lot of this stuff, you have to have way more power and influence than you currently have to change some things on the macro. I'm not going to say all of it, because I believe in mutual aid. I believe in people working together to make those changes. And I believe in both, top down, bottom up. I think both are very important and very valid. Like, I don't know why we got into this idea where you have to do one or the other. It's a simultaneous thing. But yeah, I think there's definitely, to avoid, and this might be lead into it too, to avoid that burnout constantly too, is to not give yourself so much of the responsibility of the problem, if that makes sense. And it can be hard when you care a lot. Like, sometimes I really struggle with like making sure, okay, I'm going to make sure I pay people a fair wage, because I want to be the kind of like entrepreneur or whatever kind of business person that like is being that change, is showing people that you can have people work with you and run a somewhat ethical business, not somewhat, but and run an ethical business, run a business where you care about the people that you work with, where you're transparent about finances, where you're all of these things. Like, that's something I really believe in. But at the same time, I feel so much guilt, because I'm like, oh God, I need to give away everything that I earned to all these charities and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, girl, you have so much student loan debt. Like, what are you doing? Like, take away some of the, I'm like, Khadija, you're staring down the barrel of too much. Like, take away some of the responsibility. I'm not going to fix capitalism by myself, and that's where community comes in.
Yeah.
And that's where you can share responsibility with others too. That's the other importance of community.
Yeah.
Having other people to do that work. I think so many of us think if you're not the person with the megaphone screaming, then you're not doing enough. Everybody has their place. Some of us are not going to be that person with a megaphone. Yeah. Some of us just aren't. Like, I'm not going to be that person with a megaphone at a protest. I'm actually quite introverted. I'll be there with the girls like, yo, or I will be one of the people talking online, trying to educate and organize funds for places. 100%. We all have different roles to play. And the more you embrace that too, the easier it is for you to still find joy in this work, because you're not taking the responsibility that isn't yours on. Like for me, yeah, like I said, I'm not going to be the one with the bullhorn in the middle of the protest. Yeah. But I am still going to support. I'm going to still try and educate where I can. Like I said, I'm going to still try and raise funds. I'm going to still try and do what I can, what I think is honest to me, and push myself too. Because, you know, you got to show up when it's not, the numbers count. Sometimes you can sit back at home, and other times you got to be there, you know? And so I think, I hope this isn't coming across as like, yeah, don't take so much. Like, I really want people to know that I'm not trying to say absolve yourself of anything, whatever, who cares, live, laugh, love. I'm just speaking from a place of my own experience of making sure that you're realistic about what you can and can't do, about your expectations with yourself, setting those boundaries with yourself too, so that you don't get tired. And then, yeah, so that you can still find the joy in it. Yeah. So that it's still fun, because even if this is, it's not fun, but it's kind of still fun in a way, because you're like, to me, I think it's fun because I'm looking at the end goal of like, oh, a world where people are like even better, and just, I think this is a philosophy tube thing. Like, we only care about vibes, man. Like, I know that that's like so absurd and wild, but I still dream about it, you know? And that's what makes me still smile at the end of the day, making tough content like this or having these kinds of conversations, is that I still believe that even if it's not for me, and Todd May talks about this, people that are distant from us in space and time, the people that are distant from us in time are the ones that are in the future, that haven't been born yet.
The seventh generation.
Yes. And for me, I really, sorry, I'm going to ask you about that in a second. Remind me. That's the death of the ego thing too. I want to make sure that, like, if or when I adopt kids, that they have that chance in that future. Like, that's the thing that, like, I know people are starting to talk about solar punk and stuff more and all that, you know, like, I just really, like, I don't know. That's the thing that, like, when I think about it, like, I get all like this, because I'm just like, that's what makes it fun for me still, or makes it joyful, is that even if it's hard now, you know, suffer now, enjoy later. I know it's kind of contradictory to what I was saying about joy, but do you know what I mean?
A little bit Judeo-Christian of you.
Dang, what? I was saying that for most of my 20s. I was working all these jobs, and I was like, well, suffer now, enjoy later. Like, I grew up Muslim. It explains a lot, actually. Anyway, seventh generation. Sorry, I'm actually curious about that, because I've been hearing about it a bit, but I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, so the way that it's been explained to me is that you think like it's like many different indigenous peoples from different nations have told me about this. So I'm not going to say it's from one particular nation, but the idea is that you think about how you are here because of the actions of the ancestors 7 generations past, and then that continuity shifts forward to 7 generations in the future. So the people that you never would have known, and the people that you never will know. Yeah.
Oh, I just did something to my heart. Oh, see, language is such a fascinating tool. Like, me talking about this all the time, now I have a term for it, an actual, like, term that is rooted.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has anyway, sorry. Yes.
I was talking with, one of my courses I'm taking is a language revitalization and reclamation class. Joe Brandt, and we had a guest speaker in. She's from Curve Lake, and she's an Anishinaabe speaker, and she was just talking about her whole life story, and she learned Anishinaabe from her grandparents, because that's all they spoke. They didn't speak English. And she never really kind of spoke with her parents, although she learned later in life that they were also speakers. And she like worked and had just this most fulfilling life, but passed down the language to her children who speak it a little bit. And then she passed it down to her grandchildren, and some of her grandchildren are fluent speakers. And then all of her great grandchildren, the little ones, are growing up with, they only know that she speaks Anishinaabemowin. And it's just that, like, it is 7 generations from her grandparents, the fluent speakers, to her great grandchildren that now have the language.
Oh, I think about that so much when I think about how many languages are dying in the world because of that. Like, I'm from a very small country. Like, my family is small country. It's colonization, but either way, I'm West African. I'd rather just say that. And like the language, like I can speak Wolof, but it's dodgy. Like, it's a bit like. And when I'm back in Gambia for a few months, I pick it back up. It's great. It's fine. Whatever. I can understand it almost like fully. My parents only ever spoke that to each other, and like my mom only ever spoke that to us, but my dad always spoke English to us. But like, if I go back all the generations, those are the languages. It's that, it's Jola, it's Fulani, it's Aku, because like I didn't even know that I didn't even know that my dad spoke like 3 languages and my mom spoke like 4. So, like, I didn't even know those things. Like, they didn't speak to us in those ways. And like growing up in America and Canada, it's made me start to appreciate even more that language and like wanting to be even more fluent in it so that I can speak to whatever kids I might adopt. I keep saying adopt because I'm not having children of my own body. That's that is a journey, and I commend everyone that does it. Like, commend beyond belief, because wow. But I'm too scared. I'm just gonna admit it. But yeah, I would just love that, because there are so many traditions. And this is the thing as well. Last year I interviewed with my parents because I just was like, there's so much I don't know about my ancestors. There's so much I don't know, that like I'm fortunate enough that my parents have some sort of memory to an extent. Do you know what I mean? Like, they know the people before. A lot of people don't have that, you know, a lot, especially a lot of Black Americans might not have access to that.
Yeah.
So for me, you're very right. It's such a privilege and an honor to be able to pass down all of these things and to really reckon with the fact that like, I am going to die one day. I'm not going to be here. And what's going to be left of me is whatever people remember is in the memory of others. That's the only way I'm really going to live.
Yeah.
Past that, the essence of me, whatever.
And
so,
also the knowledge that you pass down, even if it's not necessarily attributed to you, right?
Exactly. All of that. I think that's also valuable. And so being able to pass that down to your lineage or people that, even if they're not your lineage, it's a family friend, you know, I believe in like, like I was raised by 3 parents. So I do believe in that sort of stuff too. You have an aunt that just lives with you your whole life and you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I really believe in that too. But yeah, I don't know. That's just such a beautiful 7 generations. I love that. Sorry, that was such a side. We forgot we were on a call. We were like, oh my God.
Yeah. Okay, so let's remember we're on a call. To all our beautiful audience members.
Thank you.
Please send questions you may have to the chat. You can also unmute yourself, turn on your video, say hello. But we'll leave this time for questions and ask whatever you'd like.
Don't be shy. You can ask whatever you want. It doesn't have to be something deep and profound. It can be whatever.
Yes.
Gonna drink some kombucha.
So true of you. I'm gonna put us in gallery mode.
Everybody. Oh, nobody wants to ask a question.
Okay. Well.
Oh my God, it's so fine.
In that case, oh, there we go. How do you feel about the effect of online activism from the difference to surface level conversations to actually using critical thinking skills?
Wait, can you explain this question, April?
I mean, like, how do I put this? You know, like in the past year, when it comes to online activism, and then you see the effects of it, but they're so surface level, and you don't see as many people really using critical thinking for long-term effects. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, wait, your name is, Nikitha, by the way? Was it earlier you said something about, Indigenous people, they don't actually, some of them don't even like being called Indigenous, right? When it was Columbus Day and people are like, oh my God, like, fuck Columbus, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. But I'm sitting here now, like, they don't even like being called that. Like, it's like that ironic. So how do you feel about that?
I think it's twofold, because as well, it's like academia speak, right? Like, there's certain language in academia that's just been used for a while that like is about trying to, I don't know how to even explain it. It's like Latinx, right? There are so many people that are like, I'm not Latinx, I'm Latin, or I'm Latino, like, don't call me that, or I'm Latin American. Like, people will like have told me straight up, why did you say that, and other people are for it. So I think there's like that, it's just, I think because academia is like particularly quite leftist and likes to think it's quite progressive, it almost does a bit too much in trying to be super inclusive, I think, with some of the language, AKA saying Indigenous to try to be inclusive of people Indigenous to the land. But it's not how, like, they didn't name themselves that. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, it's a thing we don't realize, I guess, too. Because even when you were doing your land acknowledgement, I was like, uh-oh, I didn't know that. Oh, here we go. Like, but I think it's a thing of like, people are genuinely afraid that if they don't say something, people will, I don't know, people will feel like, I don't know how to explain it, like that they're not doing anything. Like, it's very, if it's not happening online, it's not happening at all. And I think that that's part of the problem, is that a lot of people feel pressure to say things or respond immediately to things. Like, I felt that when people started all of a sudden learning about Israel and Palestine, I was like, I've actually grown up learning about this in Sunday school in Dada when I was studying the Quran when I was younger. And I learned a lot about this stuff from when I was younger. So this isn't a surprise to me. But because I wasn't actively saying things out loud, people were thinking that I was just like trying not to get into it and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I'm not going to be this person that's going to virtue signal every single time. That's not, no. Like, because I think my therapist said this, if people can't hear your no's, how can they ever trust your yeses? If you're just always like gonna jump on the bandwagon of every trend, and this isn't a trend, these are people's lives, but I'm putting it in quotes because, activism is trendy. Like, if you're gonna jump on that bandwagon all the time, it is, I don't know how to explain it. It is very difficult to trust that, not necessarily like people that are actually like activists that are always talking about these issues and stuff like that. And it's not to say that you can't newly get into this stuff and become that, for sure. I just think it's a twofold thing of, as a society, a lot of times we put pressure on people to speak out before they know the correct information. So as a result, people constantly feel like they have to speak out and virtue signal because they're scared that they'll come across like they don't care or don't know anything because it didn't happen on the internet, as far as how I feel about it, I mean, yeah, it's shitty. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's annoying because I'm like, I need time to learn about a lot of this stuff. If I am not X ethnicity, race, origin, whatever, I'm not gonna just know it, especially given our education system. It's just the honest truth. I wasn't homeschooled, so I don't have like a special thing where my parents were like, oh, we're gonna teach you history, actual history, I learned what I was taught in school. So I've had to go out of my own way to learn differently or learn from different perspectives. And that takes time. I'm a person that needs a bit of time. I have to reread things. I have to stop for a second, talk to myself and digest it. A lot of people are like that too, but they don't feel like they're allowed to be like that because everything's so immediate. So I think if people are upset with virtue signaling, they also have to ask themselves, am I the same kind of person that yells at people that don't say anything about problems? Because then that means that you're also kind of contributing to the problem of virtue signaling. And I don't think a lot of people like to hear that about themselves.
Yep.
Whoops. It's the hard truths.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful explanation, by the way. Thank you.
No worries, no worries.
A question from Caitlin. Would you mind sharing a bit about your creative process? For example, where you find inspiration, how you translate your initial ideas into a final product, revisions and constructive feedback, knowing when something is high enough quality for sharing with the world.
Oh, I wish Priscilla was here so she could talk about how chaotic I am. I'm very organized, but I'm also very chaotic. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. I think you've seen it in this interview. Like, I'm like, I got points. I just kind of go around a lot, you know? I'm learning to edit. But no, go ahead.
Yeah, you answered half of my questions for the second half of the interview before we got
because I just be like, wow. Like, I don't know what it is. Somebody stop this brain. I need sleep. Oh, I'm kidding. Oh my God. Sorry, y'all. I wish I could see some of y'all because this feels very weird. This is not pressure to turn your cameras on. If some of you were like, I am in bed, it's not happening. Like, that's fine. Listen, it's Sunday. My creative process. I find this question so interesting because it's almost like people asking me, how do I think? To explain like how my brain gives me an idea. And I don't know what you're doing up in there. Like, I just like, honestly, I'm being 100% honest. I just will be sitting down sometimes and all of a sudden I'm like, what the? And then I make a video out of it. or I'll be on my bike. That's where I get a lot of random ideas too. Like I'll just be biking and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God. So I like get off my little bike and I'm like in my notes app, like I don't know, like my notes app is a disaster, but that's my creative process. I just like immediately think of something or I ask myself a question because I'm a very curious person. My dad says that I've just always been like that. Like I would always ask questions as a kid. I don't know, but I'm not nosy or try not to be. But anyway, I just am very curious. So I just ask myself a question or I'm like thinking about random stuff or I watch things that I get inspired by, like, because I don't think, again, that I'm so original in my thinking or in the stuff that I do. It's just original because it's coming from my individual perspective. But yeah, I randomly just allow myself the freedom to kind of explore whatever it is that I'm like, is going on in my brain. Honestly, truly, I have such great friends that are so intelligent that I can just like ask random questions to or talk about, and they give me such great insights that end up inspiring me. Oh, hey, Kayla. Sorry, I'm saying it like I know you. But like, you see the chaos? But yeah, I really enjoy being creative. Like I didn't realize it even until I graduated U of T and how stifled I felt because before U of T, I was like doing jazz and writing my own songs and performing with other people. And we would barely rehearse and we just show up and be like, we're late. And I'd be like improvising as a host and going back and forth with the pianist. And we'd be like, all right, let's do this. Like, you know, and it just was like flying by the seat of our pants, like just like letting ourselves explore and mess up and be a little weird and blah, blah, blah. And I know it sounds cheesy, but we were just jazzing everything. So like, for me, that's kind of how I think about everything. I'm just like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm either failing upwards or I'm just kind of like having a bit of fun trying to like understand this stuff. But like I said, I try not to overcomplicate it, even if I think a lot. I do think a lot, but I try not to overcomplicate it because that's when I get creatively like mind blocked. That's when things don't happen. When I have my hands around the neck of the thing and I'm like, I'm gonna create this. It's like, please. So when I release my hands around the neck of the thing, when I just am like, let me just active allowance. This is something I said in my meditations a lot for like almost a year. I was like, active allowance, because I don't like to actively allow things. I like to force it. But yeah, like the more I've leaned into that, the easier ideas just randomly pop into my head. And I think as well, if you're going to be someone that wants to have a sustainable kind of online presence, career, whatever, because everything's about branding now, in a cheesy kind of sleazy way, you kind of have to know your brand. And to me, that means knowing enough about yourself to know how you can authentically just like be yourself, but kind of sell yourself, if that makes sense. Like that's just me being honest from a business perspective. And then, yeah, just like from inception to like, I make sure I write it down because I forget everything if I don't. Like I just, once you hit 29, the brain isn't what it used to be. Kidding. Why am I talking like I'm so old? Anyway, but listen, it starts to deteriorate much quicker than I expected. But yeah, I just make sure I write it down. How it works with Priscilla as well is I will think of a video and I'll do a summary. And so I'll have like major points, and most of the time it's either like questions or just random bullet points that I'm like, I wonder why this is this, and blah, 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 blah. And then Priscilla will just pull articles and I'll go through and read them all, papers or whatever. Certain ones will work, others won't. I have realized that I don't like to take notes while I'm reading them, unless if it's a paper, I'll do certain highlighting things and put notes in them because I actually like to make sure that I have that organized. But if it's just an article, I will just start reading per section and then just start writing the script almost immediately. Like I don't even think like, how am I going to conceptualize the script? I'm just like, so y'all ever find it funny how and part of it is me talking out loud to myself, and then I write it, or I just sit and I write it. But that's just kind of how I come up with the scripts. That's how I write them. And then, yeah, filming them in front of this is pretty chill. There's a video that I just finished that is going to be way more produced than any of the other ones I've ever done. Like we had somebody doing art direction. My sister was helping produce it and made a whole schedule. It is hilarious. It's about race and horror. It's coming out this weekend. But yeah, that's probably the most like, oh, I'm starting to do more like, okay, what's with this media stuff? And that creative process was difficult at first, but then it became fun once I just let myself have fun working with people, as opposed to thinking because it was higher production value, I had to be a different person, I mean, it remains to be seen if it's going to be good or not to people. I'm proud of it either way, but did I even answer the question? That's the real question.
No, I think it was incredibly insightful. I just wanted to hear a little bit more into like, a window into the creative process in the world, because I really like the way you kind of like shape the narratives in your videos and the way you like systematically like unpack things and discuss things. I feel like
I'm
it's
very
easy
type
to
A.
follow.
Yeah, like I just like things to be organized. Like I think it's really important to like give the audience context and history, because a lot of people don't think about how that bleeds into today and how today's actions will bleed into the next. I really think that's important. And I also think it's important to like say the thing first, like tell a fun little story, do a cold open or whatever, and then let the audience make the dots and connections themselves throughout the video. Because that's half the fun too. Like when you watch movies and stuff, you're like, I bet I know what's happening. Like if you watch a TV show or something, you're like, I know that blah, blah, blah. Why is the shot so long on this? It's the whole, if a gun is going to be on stage, it better go off. So like, I think it's the creative thing. It's like music. You think about yourself and what you're feeling and how you want to express it and get it out there. And then you also consider the audience and how it might feel or whatever, or you let yourself, or you just imagine, I guess, that you're just a person like anyone else. And the audience, if you like it, the audience will too. If I think Rumi says this, words that come from the heart will enter the heart. And that's something that I really believe in. Like, I think a lot of us, you've seen performances where somebody's on stage and they're doing the thing and you're like, okay, but I don't believe you, Like, yeah, sorry, that was an extra little add-on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. Caitlin, sorry, I couldn't see the T and I was like, did I call you Caitlin?
Okay, we'll do this one last question and then we'll wrap it up for today. So another question, I feel like in activism, when speaking to individuals in positions of power, there's this automatic expectation that POCs have to be prepared with all of the answers. We talked about this a little bit, need to be perfectly prepared with all research and expertise. When it's obviously not possible to know everything, and it can be really stressful trying to strive for this before deciding to raise concerns with admin and all of that. So how do you navigate this concern or pressure and like the associated pressure that comes with it?
The pressure of if you're going to raise a concern, if like the person, like the admin that you're raising it to, will expect you to have all of this proof. Is that what you're, is that the, just so I understand the question, sorry.
Yeah, if I could just sorry, I was typing. I was like,
It's all
trying to type as
good.
fast as possible. But I think it's just because I get a lot of anxiety when like having to talk to like individuals in positions of authority, and I think this broadly refers to, you know, the advocacy work that FoMARA is doing, but it's also just like when you're talking to, say, like even parliamentarians or like representatives about your concerns about like policy and associated issues. I feel like, you know, I mean, there is some like, a level of expectation that you should be prepared to like answer questions or
For
like
sure.
to give evidence, but then I almost feel like there's like this hyper scrutiny that you're going to face that like to me is like really daunting and scary, and like kind of prevents me sometimes from wanting to even like step forward and speak about issues that concern me. So I was like wondering how you are able to navigate that or just kind of like overcome that.
I think for me, if I sit long enough, like I think a lot for sure, but if I spend too much time thinking, I won't do the thing. Like it's one of my favorite white women has said this. So terrible. Her name's Glennon Doyle. Love her though. But she was talking about how the less time you put in between you and the thing you don't want to do, the easier it is to do it. And like, I mean, we're all different people. So for me, I can only tell you that like from my experience, I have tried to just not be so fearful, because I have in my own journey understood that fear has just really been such a like a block in my life, such a hindrance. And I'm like, this is my freaking life. No one else's. I cannot keep putting my own comfort and safety and concern or whatever behind everyone else's to make them feel better, you know, even if it makes me a little uncomfortable to bring it up. I think, and I did to do this at the Faculty of Music when I was in second year, talking to the head of voice at the time, because I was like, ugh. But before I did that, I actually spoke to other singers and compiled a list of people, because I was like, you don't have any Black teachers. I don't think you've ever brought a Black clinician in. We compiled a list of like racialized singers of color that they could bring in to be guest lecturers, whatever. The very next year, they brought some people in, you know? And that was such a quick turnaround that I was surprised it happened, but it let me know that the person that I had spoken to was actually listening to me and actually was like, okay, this is you know, some people actually end up surprising you. And I know it's hard at the Faculty of Music because so many other people, this year and a half, it's like, okay. But like more people will surprise you, not more people. Some people surprise you more than not. And I think you have to give people the chance. It's very vulnerable to give people the chance to make that mistake with you, I guess. Give someone in leadership the chance to not be the person you hoped or to be the person you hoped, to listen actively with you. And the other thing about it is all of this work is very vulnerable. And this is why I always talk about emotions and stuff, because it's really important to me. It is just as vulnerable for you to say something to someone as it is for them to hear it. And I don't mean that in a way of like, they can feel the pain of oppression when you are telling them. I don't mean that. I mean, if I come to you and I'm like, you're the head of this department, I've been dealing with racism in your faculty. That is vulnerable for somebody at the head. Let's say if there's somebody that actually cares about this stuff and thinks that they do a good job. It's vulnerable for them to hear because they're like, oh, fuck. Oh, okay, damn. And some people will stop and listen and be like, okay, let me just listen. And other people get reactive and defensive, you know? So I think one major thing is to do everything you can, and there's only so much you can do, but do everything you can to really just not only know, but know that you don't have to be afraid of anyone in this world. Like, unless it's Satan themselves pulling you into hell. Like, I don't know, like there are people that like use fear as a tactic in the same exact way so that students don't feel like they can stand up for themselves. You have way more agency than anyone will let you believe. It's much easier. And this is the frustration that I have with how adults talk to young people. It's like treating kids like their parents can do whatever they want to them and set whatever rules and blah, 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 blah. And kids aren't any sort of autonomous being. Yes, you're supposed to take care of your kids, show them the way, blah, 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 blah. But just because you brought them into this world doesn't mean, as my parents' generation would say, you can take them out. Doesn't mean that you own them, you know? And same thing with teachers and students in this power dynamic. Just because they're your teacher does not mean that they all of a sudden have this sort of ownership over you, or this, you have more agency. You're the ones whose money or debt is signing their checks. So yeah, I'm sorry, but if I wasn't here, if all of us weren't here, you wouldn't have a job. So you need to understand that too. And also, if you were someone that like needs practice with that, confronting someone like that, do it with someone. That's the whole thing about coming back to community. Find a friend or maybe a couple of friends that you can raise your concerns with, so that you have a witness, because you definitely need witnesses just in case things go left. You always want to make sure you're covered in that regard. And you also have the support. And then you can also be like, we just finished that meeting. Is it me or were they? You know, like that's something really important. So if that's even the first thing you do while you're still working on believing in your agency and like being like, and how old are you? Sorry, I don't want to stereotype.
Oh, I'm 20.
20. Okay. When I was 20, I was not talking like this. When I was 20, I was just like, you know, this has taken a while for me to be able to stand in my convictions and be like, you're not going to make me feel any kind of way. And if you are, I'm not going to tell you about it. I might cry by myself, but you know, whatever. So give it time too, because it's just, my favorite thing is knowing is only rumor till it lives in the muscle. You have to really practice a lot of this kind of stuff for it to become second nature. And that's like with music too. You got to get it in your muscle before you can say you know it, you know? I hope that helps.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. That
Thanks.
was a really amazing answer.
Thanks.
Wow.
That was a lot. Sorry, y'all. Wow.
I have enough to think about for the rest of my life, I guess.
Oh my God, it's so much. I was talking at you all for so long. Jeez.
No, that's kind of what we had you here for.
Also, well, I'll talk to you after about this. Never mind. If you can stay on for like a second after.
Yeah, of course. So anyways, thanks to everyone for coming out, to everyone watching the recording. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Sarah, so middle part, come on. Yeah. Sorry. Again, I don't know you. I'm sorry.
So yeah, thanks to everyone for coming out. This is awesome. And we will see you again soon in the future. Check out the stuff FoMARA's doing. Check out the stuff Marigold's doing. Check out the stuff Khadija's doing. It's all awesome. And yeah, take care, everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
There we go.
Oh,
Hey, that was
we
awesome.
did it.